The day I buried my husband, his mother looked at my round belly and told me that baby was a problem she did not plan to deal with. I was 5 months pregnant, standing at a graveside in the rain, wearing a black dress that barely fit over the life growing inside me, and the woman who was supposed to be my family told me I needed to make a hard choice. She did not whisper it. She said it clearly, right there, while the dirt was still being turned over the man I loved. I had given that family 4 years of my life. I had raised Marcus's daughter from his first marriage like she was my own blood. I had cooked for holidays I was never fully welcomed at, driven to school concerts no one else showed up for, and stayed quiet through every small humiliation because I believed that love was something you proved through patience. I believed that one day they would see me. What I did not know was that the moment Marcus was gone, I was already gone to them too. And they were about to prove it in a way I could never take back. Before this story goes any further, I want to ask you something honestly. If you were standing where Nadia stood that day, 5 months pregnant, freshly widowed, and being told by your mother-in-law to end your pregnancy or lose your stepdaughter, what would you have done? Would you have fought back right there? Would you have gone quiet to protect the child already in your life? Or would you have done what Nadia did, which was something none of them ever expected? Stay with this story because the answer matters more than you think, and this family is about to learn exactly what it costs to throw away a woman who has nothing left to lose. Nadia was 31 years old when she met Marcus Hale at a community fundraiser for a local children's hospital. She had gone alone because her coworker bailated at the last minute and she almost did not go at all. She almost stayed home with her book and her leftover pasta. But something pushed her out the door that night, some small quiet pull she could not name, and she would spend years afterward being grateful for it and then being destroyed by what it eventually cost her. Marcus was 42. He was quiet but warm, the kind of man who listened more than he talked and remembered things you said months later as if he had written them down. He had a daughter named Lily who was 6 years old at the time, and he had primary custody because Lily's mother, a woman named Cressida, had walked away from the family when Lily was barely 2. Marcus did not speak badly about Cressida. He spoke about her the way a person speaks about a storm that passed through and rearranged everything. He simply said that Lily needed stability, and he had built that stability the best way he knew how. Nadia fell in love with both of them, not in a romantic rush, but slowly, the way warmth builds in a room that has been cold for too long. She started spending weekends at Marcus's house, then weekday evenings. She learned that Lily was afraid of thunderstorms, loved strawberry jam on her toast, and would only fall asleep if someone read to her for at least 15 minutes. Nadia read to her every single time. She sat on the edge of Lily's small bed with a picture book balanced in her hands, and she read until Lily's breathing went slow and even, and then she sat there a little longer because the stillness felt like something precious. Marcus watched her do this and something in his face changed. He told her once quietly while they were doing dishes after dinner that he had never seen Lily take to someone the way she took to Nadia. He said it like he was confessing something. Nadia pressed her shoulder into his and did not say anything back because there were no words big enough for what she felt in that moment. They got married 2 years after they met, in a small outdoor ceremony with about 40 people present. Marcus's mother, Elaine Hale, sat in the front row in a stiff cream blazer, and a look on her face that Nadia had come to understand meant she was doing the work of performing approval while privately disagreeing with everything. Elaine had wanted Marcus to remarry within a certain circle, meaning women she had known for years, women whose families she could evaluate, women whose backgrounds she had already researched and pre-approved. Nadia was a school occupational therapist from a family that had never owned property or attended the kind of events Elaine considered worth attending. Elaine was not cruel to her face. She was something worse. She was politely distant in a way that communicated everything without saying a word. Marcus's sister Diane was warmer on the surface, but had a habit of making comments that landed like small stones. She would compliment Nadia's dress by first noting that it was interesting Nadia chose that silhouette. She would praise Nadia's cooking by saying it was impressive for someone who grew up without much exposure to food like this. Nadia Lee. Ned to smile at these comments and let them slide past her because Marcus loved his family and she loved Marcus, and she believed that over time she would earn a real place. She believed patience was enough. She believed that if she kept showing up, kept being kind, kept doing the work, the distance would close. She was wrong about that, but she did not know it yet. The first real crack came at Lily's school spring concert when Lily was 8. Nadia had taken the afternoon off work to make sure she was there early enough to get a good seat. She had saved 3 seats, one for herself, one for Marcus who was driving from a meeting, and one for Elaine who had promised Lily she would come. Marcus arrived 5 minutes before it started, breathless and grateful. Elaine never came. She texted Marcus later saying something had come up. Lily had looked out at the audience 3 times during her song, each time scanning for her grandmother, and Nadia had watched the child's face do something quiet and painful when the scanning stopped. After the concert, Nadia held Lily's hand in the parking lot and told her that her voice had been the most beautiful one on that stage and that she had heard every single word. Lily leaned into her side and said thank you in a small voice. Nadia felt something protective and fierce rise up in her chest. Marcus noticed. He pulled Nadia close that evening and told her that Lily was lucky to have her and that he was lucky to have her and that it meant everything. Nadia believed him. She believed all of it. She was building something real, she thought. She was part of a family. She was the person Lily could count on when the other seats were empty. They had been married for a year and a half when Nadia got pregnant. It was not planned, but it was not unwelcome. Marcus held her hands across the kitchen table when she showed him the test and his eyes went full and bright. He said they were going to be a family in every direction and that this baby was everything. Lily, who was 9 by then, pressed her ear against Nadia's still flat stomach and asked if the baby could hear her yet. Nadia told her the baby could definitely hear her. Lily started talking to the baby every evening after that, little whispered updates about her day, about what she had learned at school, about what she wanted the baby to know. Elaine's reaction was different. She called Marcus the same evening Nadia had shared the news with the family. Nadia was in the next room folding laundry, but the house was not large and the walls were thin enough. She heard Marcus's side of the conversation shift from pleased to quiet to careful. He came in afterward and said that his mother was adjusting to the idea and that she needed a little time. Nadia asked what that meant. Marcus said it was nothing and kissed her forehead and changed the subject. 3 weeks later, over Sunday dinner at Elaine's house, Elaine asked Nadia directly whether she had thought about how a new baby would affect Lily's sense of security in the family. She said it with the calm tone of a woman who believed she was asking a reasonable question. Nadia set down her fork and said that Lily was deeply loved and that she and Marcus had already talked to Lily openly and that Lily was excited. Elaine nodded slowly as if Nadia had said something naive. Diane said nothing, but exchanged a look with Elaine that Nadia caught from across the table. Nadia finished her dinner and smiled and drove home and sat in the car in the driveway for a long time before going inside. Marcus died on a Tuesday morning in early November. He had a cardiac event on the way to work, a sudden and catastrophic arrhythmia that the doctors later said he likely never felt coming. He was 44 years old. He was healthy by every measure anyone had ever applied. He had eaten well and exercised and had no significant family history of the condition that took him. He was there on Monday evening reading to Lily at bedtime, his voice low and steady through the wall, and on Tuesday morning he was gone. Nadia was 5 months pregnant. The grief was not something she could describe in words that did not immediately fall short. It was not sadness exactly, though sadness was part of it. It was more like a structural collapse, like the load-bearing wall of her entire life had simply disappeared and everything was tilting and she did not know yet which direction it would fall. She had to call Lily's school and explain. She had to arrange the funeral while her body ached and her hands shook. She had to hold Lily while Lily cried herself into exhausted sleep 2 nights in a row. And she had to be steady for this child who had already lost one parent to absence and was now losing the second one to death. Elaine arrived at the house the morning after Marcus died. She walked in without knocking, moved through the rooms as though she were inventorying the space, and sat down at the kitchen table with the look of a person who had already made several decisions. She told Nadia that Marcus had life insurance, which Nadia knew, and that there would need to be conversations about the estate and the house and Lily's future. Nadia said that of course they would work through everything together. Elaine looked at Nadia's stomach then, deliberately the way you look at a problem that is not going away on its own, and she said that having a baby was going to make things very complicated. Nadia said that her baby was Marcus's child and a sibling to Lily, and that the baby was not a complication. Elaine said she understood that Nadia felt that way. That was the entire conversation. Elaine stood up, put on her coat, and said she would be back in a few days once things had settled. The funeral was 5 days later. It rained lightly the entire time, the kind of fine, steady rain that makes the world feel gray and muffled. Nadia stood at the graveside with Lily holding one of her hands and her other hand pressed against her belly. She had not slept more than 3 hours at a stretch in 5 days. Her face was held together by something that came from a place deeper than strength, more like necessity, the way you keep breathing not because you want to, but because the body simply will not stop. Elaine waited until the last of the other mourners had moved toward their cars. Then she stepped close to Nadia and said what she said. She said that Nadia needed to think clearly about the pregnancy. She said that Nadia was a widow now without a husband's income and with a child already in her care who was not biologically Nadia's, and that bringing another baby into this situation was not practical and was not what was best for anyone. She said this calmly, as if practicality were kindness. Nadia looked at her for a moment. The rain fell. Lily was a few feet away holding the umbrella Diane had given her. Nadia said that she was going home now to rest and that she would not be having this conversation. Elaine said that was fine, but that she hoped Nadia would think about what was best for Lily, and that Elaine was prepared to make sure Lily had the stability she needed, one way or another. Nadia did not answer that. She took Lily's hand and walked to the car. She did not sleep that night. She lay in the bed she had shared with Marcus for 3 years and stared at the ceiling and tried to hear his voice in her memory clearly enough to steady her. She pressed both hands against her belly and felt the baby move, small rolling movements that she had only started to feel in the past week or so, and she said out loud in the dark that she was not going to let anyone take anything from her. She meant it, but the next 2 weeks were going to test that promise in ways she was not yet prepared for. Elaine's campaign began quietly. It always does with people who understand how power works without appearing to use it. She started calling Lily every evening, which she had never done before. She started offering to take Lily for the weekend to give Nadia rest, which was framed as generosity but which Nadia recognized, with the part of her brain that never fully relaxed around this woman, as something else. She started copying Diane on emails about Lily's school schedule and doctor's appointments, as if she and Diane were a co-parenting unit that existed parallel to Nadia. Nadia said yes to one weekend visit because she genuinely needed rest, and because Lily loved her grandmother in the uncomplicated way children love the people who are warm to them, and Nadia did not want to take that from her. Lily packed her overnight bag with the careful seriousness. She applied to everything and kissed Nadia's belly before she left and told the baby she would be back Sunday. Elaine brought Lily back on Sunday afternoon but was an hour later than she had said. She also brought a woman named Patricia, who turned out to be a family lawyer. Patricia did not announce herself as a lawyer. She sat down in Nadia's living room and talked about how difficult grief was and how important it was for children to have consistency, and then mentioned almost as a footnote that in situations like this, it was not uncommon for family members to seek formal guardianship arrangements to ensure stability for minors. Nadia asked Patricia directly if she was a lawyer. Patricia said yes. Nadia stood up and asked both women to leave. Elaine said she only wanted to talk. Nadia went to the front door and opened it and stood beside it and did not say anything else. Elaine and Patricia left. Nadia closed the door and then sat on the floor of the hallway because her legs would not carry her to the couch, and she cried until she had nothing left. Then she got up, she made herself tea. She called her own lawyer, a woman named Sasha who had handled her and Marcus's wills and had a reputation for not being rattled by anything. Sasha answered on the second ring. The conversation was 40 minutes long and by the end of it, Nadia understood her position clearly. Marcus had left a will. The house was jointly owned and passed fully to Nadia. The life insurance had Nadia as the primary beneficiary. Lily's legal custody, because Marcus had full custody from his previous marriage, had a specific clause in Marcus's will designating Nadia as the preferred guardian in the event of his death, over the objection of any other family member. Marcus had done this deliberately and quietly, and Sasha had the documents to prove it. Marcus had seen something in his family that he had not put into words to Nadia, but he had put it into legal form, and he had done it 2 years before he died when there was no emergency to prompt it. He had just known. Nadia sat with that knowledge for a long time. She pressed it close to her chest like something warm. He had known, he had protected her. He was gone, but he had left this behind. Elaine did not know about the guardianship clause, or if she did not believe it would hold. Because 2 weeks after the funeral, she called Nadia and said that she had spoken to a family court consultant and that as Marcus's mother, she had a strong claim to Lily's care and that she was prepared to file for emergency guardianship if Nadia refused to cooperate. She said the word cooperate with the smooth certainty of a person who had never been truly refused anything. Nadia asked what cooperate meant specifically. Elaine said it meant that Nadia would agree to Lily staying primarily with Elaine while Nadia sorted out her situation, meaning the pregnancy, meaning the financial reality, meaning what Elaine clearly believed was Nadia's inability to manage what was coming. Nadia said she needed a day to think. She did not need a day, she had already thought, but she wanted the 24 hours to make sure everything Sasha had told her was in writing and organized and ready. The next morning, Nadia called Elaine back and told her that she understood Elaine's concern for Lily and that she respected Elaine's love for her granddaughter. She also told Elaine that she had spoken with her attorney and that Marcus had made legal arrangements that named Nadia as Lily's preferred guardian in the event of his death and that any court challenge would face that document first. She said this calmly. She said she would be happy to share the document if Elaine wished to review it with her own attorney. She said that Lily was home, healthy, well-loved, and not going anywhere. She said that Elaine was welcome to be a grandmother in Lily's life, that she had never wanted to prevent that, but that she would not be giving up custody of a child she had raised for the past 4 years because Elaine had decided that Nadia was inconvenient. There was a long silence on the phone. Elaine said that Nadia was making a mistake. Nadia said she did not think she was. Elaine hung up. Nadia put the phone down and breathed. The baby moved inside her. Lily was at school. The house was quiet and the morning light came through the kitchen window at an angle that caught the edge of the table and made a warm stripe across the floor. Nadia sat in it for a moment and let herself feel, just for a second, that she was going to be all right. The weeks that followed were not easy. They were never going to be easy. Nadia was 6 months pregnant, then 7, grieving and tired in a way that went past tiredness into something cellular, something that lived in her bones. She woke up before 5 most mornings because her body would not let her sleep and because the silence at 4 in the morning had a particular texture that made her feel the absence of Marcus more sharply than any other hour. She would make tea and sit at the kitchen table and look at the chair across from her that used to be his, and she would let herself have the grief for a few minutes before the house woke up, and she had to be steady again. She was always steady when it mattered. Lily needed that. Lily had started having difficulty at school, small things at first, crying more easily, having trouble concentrating, then a few incidents where she had been short with classmates in a way that was not like her. Nadia met with Lily's teacher twice in 1 month and made an appointment with a child therapist named Dr. Reyes who specialized in childhood grief. Dr. Reyes was quiet and patient and had a small office painted in warm yellow, and Lily started going every other Thursday and slowly began to unclench. Elaine found out about the therapy and called to say that it was unnecessary and that Lily needed family, not a stranger. Nadia thanked her for her concern. Elaine said that Nadia was using Marcus's insurance money irresponsibly. Nadia said goodbye and ended the call. Diane reached out shortly after with a softer approach. She texted Nadia a long message about how hard this was for everyone and how she hoped they could find a way forward that honored Marcus and kept the family tog. Ether, Nadia read it twice and wrote back that she agreed the family should stay connected around Lily and that she was open to regular visits at a schedule that worked for everyone. She said she wanted Lily to know her grandmother and her aunt. She said she only needed those visits to be respectful and without pressure. Diane never responded to that message. The baby came on a cold, bright morning in late January. Nadia had driven herself to the hospital at 3 in the morning because her neighbor could not get there fast enough and she was not going to wait. Her name was Clara. She weighed 7 pounds and had Marcus's ears and a way of looking up at the ceiling with calm seriousness that made Nadia feel, in the middle of all the devastation of that year, that something genuinely beautiful had arrived. Lily met Clara that afternoon. She sat in the hospital chair with her arms arranged carefully the way the nurse showed her, and she held her sister for the first time, and her face did something that Nadia had no words for. It was the face of a child who had spent months in a state of loss and was recognizing, in the warm weight of this new person in her arms, that something had been given back. Lily told Clara her name very quietly and said that she was going to take very good care of her. She looked up at Nadia and said it again. Nadia said she knew. Nobody from Marcus's family came to the hospital. Elaine sent a card 4 days later. The card had a picture of a flower on it, and inside it said congratulations in Elaine's handwriting and nothing else. No name for the baby, no question about how Nadia was doing, no acknowledgement of the child's connection to her son. Nadia put the card in a drawer and did not look at it again. The first year with Clara was the hardest and the most clarifying year of Nadia's life. She was navigating grief and newborn exhaustion simultaneously, which meant there were days when she did not know which weight was which and they simply merged into a single enormous pressure. But she had help. Her own mother, a practical and loving woman named Rose, came and stayed for 6 weeks after Clara's birth and was the quiet engine of the household during that time. Her friend Miriam, who had known Nadia since college, took Lily to and from school 3 days a week for 2 months without being asked twice. Dr. Reyes kept seeing Lily and also gently recommended someone for Nadia, a grief counselor named Stephen who had an office above a bookshop downtown and who helped Nadia understand that what she was feeling was not weakness but appropriate, and that surviving it did not require her to pretend it was not happening. She built a life, not the one she had planned, not the one she and Marcus had drawn in quiet conversations about the future, but a life with real warmth in it. Clara grew into a baby who laughed easily and reached for faces and had a particular fondness for the color orange that made no logical sense but charmed everyone who met her. Lily grew slowly back toward herself, not fully, not without the permanent shape of loss sitting somewhere in her, but she laughed again, she had friends over again, she started taking guitar lessons and practiced every evening in her room with a concentration that Nadia found quietly heroic. Elaine made occasional attempts at contact over that first year. A phone call here, a request to see Lily there. Nadia allowed the visits because she had meant what she said about not cutting Lily off from family. But she set the terms, visits at Nadia's house or at a neutral location. No overnight stays for now, no discussions about guardianship or the pregnancy or Nadia's finances. When Elaine pushed against those terms, which she did the first 2 times, Nadia ended the visit politely and calmly and said they could try again in a few weeks. By the third visit, Elaine had adjusted. She was not warm, she never became warm. But she sat in Nadia's living room and had a biscuit and watched Lily draw and managed to keep the subtext below the surface, which was the only thing Nadia had ever asked. The second year brought something none of them had anticipated. Marcus had been a partner in a small architectural firm, Hale and Mercer Design, which he had co-founded with a man named David Mercer 12 years before he died. The firm had a partnership agreement that Nadia had been copied on as part of the estate process, but had not fully examined at the time because she had been managing approximately 1,000 other things. When Marcus died, his share of the partnership had technically entered a probate process that Sasha was managing, and it had been operating under a kind of suspended arrangement while the estate settled. What Nadia had not fully understood, because she was not an architect and had not been deeply involved in Marcus's business life, was that the firm had been working on a large public commission for the past 2 years, a regional arts center that was now nearing the final approval stages and was about to become a significant financial and reputational landmark for the firm. Marcus had been the lead creative voice on the project. His name was still on the proposal documents. His design sensibility was woven into every major structural choice. When the Art Center project was officially approved and awarded and the story ran in the regional architecture press, it included a profile of the firm and its principals. The article mentioned Marcus Hale's foundational work on the project and the fact that he had died before seeing it completed. It also mentioned in one brief line that Marcus's estate interest in the firm had been preserved through probate and was currently held by his wife. Elaine read the article. 3 days later, she called Nadia and said she wanted to talk about Marcus's legacy and about what was best for his professional reputation and for Lily's future. She said she had spoken to David Mercer and that there were some important conversations that needed to happen about the firm's direction going forward. Nadia told her she would call her back. She called Sasha first, and Sasha laid it out plainly. Marcus's share of the partnership was part of his estate. Nadia, as the estate's primary beneficiary, held that interest. It was not enormous in immediate cash terms, but the Art Center project had attached a significant value to the firm that had not existed before. Depending on how the partnership agreement handled buyouts or continued involvement, Nadia could either choose to sell Marcus's share back to David Mercer at the now elevated valuation, or she could maintain a passive interest and receive distributions. Sasha said Nadia had more leverage than she probably realized. Elaine called again the next day, then Diane texted, then David Mercer called warmly and carefully to suggest a lunch meeting. Nadia noticed the pattern. She had been living in a certain kind of quiet for over a year and a half, building her household and raising her daughters and letting the distance from Marcus's family exist in its natural state, and now as if a signal had gone out, she was hearing from all of them at once. The signal was money and legacy, and the architecture firm's suddenly increased profile. The signal was that something valuable was in Nadia's hands, and they had all realized it at the same time. She met with David Mercer. He was a decent man genuinely, and he had respected Marcus, and he was not playing games the way Elaine played games. He simply wanted clarity and a fair path forward. He proposed to buy out Marcus's estate share at a figure that Sasha later told Nadia was about 60% of what it was actually worth. Not in a malicious way, Sasha said, just in the way people propose numbers that favor themselves when they believe the other party will not push back. Nadia pushed back. She did it through Sasha so that it stayed clean and professional. She said she needed a proper independent valuation before any transaction. David agreed. The valuation came back with a number that was substantially higher. Nadia and Sasha went back with that number. David came back with a counter. They went back and forth 3 times over 6 weeks and ultimately reached an agreement that was fair to both sides. Nadia signed the papers on a Thursday morning and walked out with a settlement that meant her daughter's future had a floor under it that could not be moved. She had not told Elaine any of this was happening. Elaine had been operating on the assumption that she would be included in conversations about Marcus's professional legacy, that she would have some role in how his business affairs were resolved, that her relationship with David Mercer and her years as Marcus's mother gave her standing in the process. She had been calling Nadia every few days with suggestions and strong opinions. Nadia had been polite and vague and had said she was still in the process of understanding things. When Elaine finally heard through David Mercer that the transaction was complete, she called Nadia in a state of barely contained fury. She said that Marcus's name and reputation were not Nadia's to negotiate with. She said that Lily deserved to benefit from her father's legacy and that Nadia had no right to make those decisions alone. She said she could not believe that Nadia had done this without consulting the family. Nadia let her finish. Then she said very quietly that Lily was her daughter and was one of 2 primary beneficiaries of the trust she was establishing with the settlement funds. She said that Clara was the other. She said that both girls would have access to those funds for education and significant life expenses starting at 18. She said that Marcus's name was on the firm's website. His contribution to the Art Center project was documented publicly and permanently in the architectural record, and his legacy was fully intact. She said that she had managed the legal process as Marcus's estate beneficiary, which was the role his own will had assigned her, and that she had done it with care and with the help of a qualified attorney. Then she said something she had been preparing to say for a very long time. She said that she had spent 4 years making space for Elaine in her family and in her home. She had driven Lily to visits that Elaine scheduled and then changed. She had kept her own feelings quiet at dinners where she felt like a guest in her own story. She had allowed the subtle diminishments and the loaded silences and the comments about her practicality and her background and her usefulness, and she had done all of this because she had believed that love for Marcus and love for Lily required that patience. She said she had been wrong to keep paying that price with nothing given in return. She said she was not angry, she was done. She said Elaine was welcome in Lily's life as a grandmother who showed up with kindness and consistency. She said any attempt to undermine Nadia's role as Lily's guardian, any legal challenge, any effort to use Lily as a means to access or influence what Nadia was managing, would be met with the same attorney and the same documentation that had already handled one challenge from Elaine successfully. She said she hoped it would not come to that. Elaine said nothing for a moment, then she said Nadia had changed. Nadia said yes, she had. The call ended. Nadia made tea and sat down at the kitchen table, and Lily came in from the backyard with Clara on her hip, carrying her little sister the way she had started doing in the past few months as Clara got steady and curious and wanted to move toward everything. And Lily set Clara down on the kitchen floor with a plastic cup to bang, and Lily sat across from Nadia and looked at her and said, "Are you okay?" Nadia looked at her elder daughter, this girl who had lost her father and survived it, who held her sister with such natural care, who practiced guitar every evening with that quiet, heroic concentration, and Nadia said, "Yes, actually. I think I am." Lily said you were on the phone with Grandma. Nadia said she was. Lily said it was okay because she knew Nadia always handled things. Nadia felt that land in her chest in a place that was both tender and strong. She said that Lily could always talk to her about Grandma and about any of it, that there were no forbidden feelings in this house. Lily said she knew that too. Clara banged the cup on the floor twice with great satisfaction and then looked up at both of them with the bright, unreasonable joy that was so completely her own character that Nadia and Lily both started laughing at the same time, and the kitchen filled with it. The months that followed were quieter in the way that stability is quiet, not empty, not lonely, but settled. Nadia returned to full-time work at the school district, managing a caseload of students with occupational therapy needs that she genuinely cared about, and there was something grounding about the work, about the small concrete progress of a child learning to grip a pencil differently or organize a space that had overwhelmed them before. She was good at her job. She had always been good at her job. She had just spent several years in a family context that measured goodness in ways she could never quite meet. She started having her own mother over for Sunday dinners, a practice she had let slip during the worst of the grief and was now rebuilding with intention. Rose would come on Sunday afternoon, sometimes with Nadia's aunt, and they would cook together and the kitchen would smell of things that made the girls run in from wherever they were. Lily had learned to make dal and was very proud of this. Clara had learned that if she sat at the base of the counter and made sounds of extreme urgency, someone would eventually give her something to taste. Miriam came over on the occasional Saturday evening after the girls were in bed, and they would open a bottle of wine and talk about things that were not grief and not logistics and not legal proceedings. And it was such a relief to simply talk like a person who had things on her mind beyond survival. Nadia started reading again, not just books she read to Clara at bedtime, but her own books. Actual literature that she had no particular reason to read except that she wanted to. She planted a small garden in the back corner of the yard where there had been bare dirt since they bought the house. Marcus had meant to do something with it. Nadia dug it up herself one weekend in late spring and planted tomatoes and mint and 2 varieties of basil, and she did not know if she had done it quite right, but she did it anyway. And by July there were actual tomatoes, and she brought them inside and put them on the kitchen table and just looked at them for a moment before she used them. Because they were hers, entirely hers, grown from something she had started with her own hands. Tea was during this period of quiet building that Elaine got sick. It was not a small thing. Elaine was diagnosed with a serious cardiac condition that required a surgical procedure and an extended recovery, and the prognosis was uncertain in a way that scared everyone, including Nadia suspected Elaine herself. Diane called Nadia to let her know. The call was uncharacteristically plain, none of the usual layered softness that concealed pointed things, just a direct description of the situation and an admission that things were serious. Nadia listened. She thanked Diane for telling her. She said she was sorry and she meant it because she was. Whatever she felt about Elaine and what Elaine had put her through, she did not want the woman to suffer. She did not want Lily to lose a grandmother. She did not want illness to be anyone's ending. She told Lily gently and clearly. Lily got quiet for a day and then asked if she could call her grandmother. Nadia sat beside her while she made the call. Elaine's voice on the speaker was softer than Nadia had ever heard it. Elaine said Lily's name in a way that sounded like she was holding something fragile. Lily said she loved her grandmother and that she was going to make her a card. Elaine said that would be wonderful. Nadia did not get on the phone, but after Lily was done, she took the phone and said, Elaine? Elaine said yes. Nadia said she hoped the procedure went smoothly and that she would make sure Lily could visit once the recovery allowed it. Elaine was quiet for a moment and then said thank you, just that, thank you. It was the first time Elaine had thanked her for anything. The procedure happened. The recovery was long and difficult, and Elaine was in the hospital for 3 weeks and then in a rehabilitation facility for another 6. Diane was stretched thin. Diane's husband was dealing with a work crisis, and her own children were young, and she was driving between the rehab facility and her home and trying to manage more than she could comfortably hold. Nadia brought Lily to visit Elaine twice during the rehabilitation period. She drove them herself and sat in the hallway reading while Lily was inside. The second visit, Elaine asked if Nadia would come in. Nadia went in. The room was small and the afternoon light was thin, and Elaine was sitting up in the bed with her reading glasses pushed onto her forehead. She looked smaller than she had before. Not in a pitiful way, but in the way that serious illness strips away whatever a person was using to appear larger than they are. Elaine said without preamble that she had done things poorly. She said she had let her fear for Lily and her grief for Marcus come out in ways that were unjust. She said she had not welcomed Nadia the way she should have and that she had made the worst year of Nadia's life harder. She said she did not expect forgiveness and she was not asking for it. She was just saying it. Nadia sat in the chair beside the bed. She did not fill the silence immediately. She let what had been said exist in the room. Then she said that she appreciated hearing it. She said she wanted Elaine to know that Lily loved her genuinely and that the relationship between Elaine and Lily was worth protecting for Lily's sake, not for any other reason. She said she was not holding the past as a weapon and she did not plan to. She said she could not give back the year she had lost or the pregnancy in which she had been alone, but she could choose how the future was shaped, and she was choosing to let space exist for something better. Elaine nodded. Her eyes were wet, which was the most undone Nadia had ever seen her. Lily came back in from the small attached bathroom where she had been washing her hands, and she looked between the two of them and said, "Are you both okay?" And both Nadia and Elaine said yes at the same time. And Lily said, "Good. Because I'm about to tell you both about the guitar solo I've been learning, and I need you to be emotionally ready." Nadia laughed first. Elaine followed, a real laugh, genuine and startled out of her, and for a moment the small room with its thin afternoon light was full of something warm. This was not a fairy tale ending. Nadia was not naive enough to believe that a conversation in a rehabilitation room erased years of pattern. Elaine did not become a different person overnight. She remained someone who had opinions about how things should be done and who sometimes expressed them in ways that landed wrong. She did not become Nadia's close companion or her mother figure or the grandmother she had always wished Lily had. But she became honest in a way she had not been before. She called on Lily's birthday without prompting and asked about the guitar. She sent Clara a gift with both girls' names written on the card, which was a small thing but which Nadia noticed. She did not interfere in decisions about the girls. She did not raise the estate again. She came to Lily's first guitar recital. A small event in the school's music room with folding chairs and a table of juice and crackers in the back. And she sat next to Nadia and watched Lily play without saying anything that was not simply true. Afterward, in the parking lot, Elaine said that Marcus would have loved this. Nadia said she knew. They stood there for a moment in the cool air, and then Elaine said goodnight and got into her car, and Nadia buckled Clara into her seat, and Lily climbed in beside her with her guitar case, and said, as they pulled out of the lot, that it had been a good night. Nadia said yes, it had been a good night. There is something Nadia understood by the time all of this was behind her, not fully behind her because it lives in her the way significant things always live in the people they happen to, but behind her in the sense that it no longer controlled the direction of her days. What she understood was that she had spent years performing loyalty for people who measured her worth by how useful she was to them in the current moment. She had made herself small in rooms where she deserved to take up space. She had stayed quiet in conversations where her voice would have cost her something, and she had mistaken that quietness for grace when really it was just self-erasure wearing a polite face. What changed was not that she became harder. She was never hard. What changed was that she stopped confusing kindness with compliance. She stopped thinking that being easy to manage made her worthy of love. She stopped waiting for the people around her to finally see her full value before she allowed herself to act on it. She had been approved by Marcus in the deepest possible way, by a man who had quietly put her name on documents that protected her before any crisis had arrived to make the need obvious. He had seen her. She had spent a year and a half looking for that same seeing from people who were not built for it and did not want to learn. The trust she set up for Lily and Clara became real in ways that both girls would understand differently as they grew older. Lily, who was 12 when Nadia finished establishing it, understood in a practical way that there was something her mother had built and protected for her and that it would be there when she needed it. Clara, who was 2, did not understand anything except that there were tomatoes in the garden and her sister would carry her around the yard to look at them when the weather was warm. But the trust was real, the house was hers. Her work was good and solid and ongoing. Her mother came on Sundays. Miriam came on Saturdays. Dr. Reyes had told her in one of their last sessions that grief did not end but it changed shape and that you could eventually carry it without it carrying you, and Nadia had found this to be true in the way that only personal experience can confirm something that sounds too simple to be believed. She still missed Marcus. She would always miss Marcus. She missed the particular quality of his attention and the way he laughed and the sound of his voice reading to Lily through the wall at night. She missed having a person who knew all of her and chose to stay. But she had stopped waiting for that absence to become smaller. She had let it be the size it was and built the rest of her life around it, not to fill it but to live alongside it with honesty. Lily asked her once when she was around 13 whether Nadia ever thought about finding someone else. Nadia thought about how to answer that in a way that was honest without being heavy. She said she did not know. She said that right now her life was full and that she was not looking for anything to complete it. She said that if someone arrived who was real and kind and good for all of them, she would not close a door on it, but she was not searching for it to fix something because nothing was broken. Lily thought about this for a second and then said that made sense and went back to her guitar. Nadia sat there for a moment after and thought that yes, that was exactly it. Nothing was broken, things had been hurt and some things had been lost, and the shape of her life was not the one she had drawn in the quiet conversations she and Marcus used to have about the future. But nothing was broken, she was whole. She had done the work of being whole even when it cost her more than she wanted to pay. That, in the end, was what none of them had counted on. Elaine had looked at a 5 months pregnant widow and seen someone manageable, someone whose grief would make her compliant and whose need for support would create leverage. She had not seen someone who had been quietly building capability and clarity for years, someone who had a lawyer and a will and a document with her name on it, someone who would sit on the floor of a hallway and cry and then get up and make tea and make calls and make decisions. Diane had seen someone who would eventually need help enough to accept terms. She had not seen someone who was building a village of people who actually loved her, who were there not because they needed something from her but because she was worth being close to. Even David Mercer, decent man that he was, had presented a number that assumed Nadia would not know any better. He had not counted on Sasha, or on Nadia's quiet habit of reading everything carefully and asking questions that did not announce themselves as powerful. They had all counted on her being exactly as lost as she looked. She had been lost. She was honest with herself about that. There were months in that first year when she did not know how to get from the morning to the evening without something cracking. There were nights when she talked to Marcus's memory in the dark and asked him to help her hold it together. There were days when the weight of the 2 girls and the house and the grief and the legal process and the financial uncertainty sat on her like something physical, and she simply had to breathe through it until it became possible to move again. But lost is not the same as broken. Lost is not the same as finished. Lost is sometimes just the thing that happens before you find a different path, one you would never have chosen yourself, but that turns out to have been the right one all along. The garden in the backyard expanded the following summer. Lily helped plant it that year. Clara stood at the edge and pointed at things with great authority. Nadia's mother Rose came over on the Sunday they finished and brought food, and they all ate outside in the early evening with the kitchen light coming yellow through the back window and the air smelling of basil and cut grass and whatever Lily had burned slightly in the pan trying to help. It was ordinary, it was completely ordinary and entirely enough. Nadia looked at the table full of the people who were hers and who she was, and she thought of the graveside in the rain and the small room in the rehabilitation center and the hallway floor she had cried on and the phone call she had ended and the document with her name on it and the trust she had built and the number she had pushed back on and the door she had stood beside and held open until people left. And she thought that all of it, every single part of it, had been exactly what it needed to be. Not because it was fair, not because it was what she would have chosen, but because she had been present for all of it, and she had not let any of it make her smaller, and now here she was in her yard with her daughters, with tomatoes she grew herself, with people who showed up because they wanted to, and with the clear, unshakable sense that she had built this life with her own hands and it belonged to her completely. Nobody had given her that. She had kept it. Nadia did not win because she was louder. She did not win because she retaliated or played games or waited for the right moment to destroy anyone. She won because she knew what was hers, she protected what mattered, she let the truth do what the truth does when it is not hidden, and she refused to let grief be used as a tool against her. If you have ever been in a room where the people who were supposed to love you most saw only what you could provide and never who you actually were, then this story was for you. Tell me in the comments the moment in this story where you would have said enough. Tell me if you have had someone in your life like Elaine, someone who smiled at your face while measuring your replacement behind your back. And if you are in the middle of a season like Nadia's right now, I want you to hear this clearly. Being lost is not the same as being finished. You can cry on the floor and then get up and make the call. You can be grief-stricken and still be the most capable person in the room. Do not let anyone use your softness against you. Nadia did not, and she planted tomatoes.